You can actually, when you do maintenance or you do anything on your home, you can fax that to your insurance company and it just builds a good track record. It will reduce a denial claim because you've got a proven track record that you're maintaining your home.
Right when you would say, hey, could you email me the bid? Just say, when you email me the bid, could you please include a copy of your insurance, your certificate of insurance, and your licensing?
Absolutely. You got to decide what your risk is. You know, that $500 job versus your $750,000 or $1 million home. Maybe that's a $1,000 job going with a reputable company.
Information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up to date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussions and answers to questions do not involve the rendering of personalized investment advice, but are limited to the dissemination of general information. A professional advisor should be consulted before implementing any of the options presented. Encompass More Asset Management LLC is a registered investment advisor with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Ducharme Wealth Management Podcast. I am joined today by one of my new friends, James Martin, here in Southern Utah. He's an electrician and owns and operates a business here locally called Mr. Sparky. And we were having this conversation the other day about the perils that people face when they hire a contractor to work in their home. And it made me reflect back on a unit within the accredited wealth management program that I advisory program that I did a couple of years ago. And the whole unit was actually around the behavioral management of wealth management and not the psychology of investing or anything like that. But hey, a great way to avoid getting sued is to live a lower key lifestyle, right? If a lot of people don't know you have money, then it becomes more challenging to get sued. You're diminishing your risk of becoming a target, right? And so that kind of whole framework opened up my eyes to the way that not only was I raised in my family to manage your circumstances around you, right? Control your controllables. But it really brought it back up when James was having this conversation with me. So appreciate you coming to talk and discuss some of the things homeowners can do to try to protect themselves when they're in a situation that they're considering or need to hire a professional to come work in their home, some type of tradesman, typically, something like that. Anything you want to share really quick about like your background, James, at all, what you've done throughout your career, or anything fascinated before we get into the horror stories?
Sure. Yes. Let's jump in. So again, James Martin, Mr. Sparky Electric. I actually didn't start with residential home services. Just opened up this company in the last, 3 to 6 months. So before I started in commercial, I got 18 years of commercial, industrial, and some residential experience running, larger projects, anything from, Amazon, Meta, state prison, some of your some of those projects are electrically $100 million plus. So I have a lot of experience with specifications on jobs. We have to use certain parts and safety and if you really dig into it, these massive projects with several employees. So knowing the code book, knowing the state laws, knowing, making sure insurance is in place and understanding what those costs are on these massive commercial projects, and that's what we're all used to in the commercial world, industrial world. Like, you have to prove you have insurance. You have to prove that individuals on the job are not only licensed, but can do the work. And so those are kind of some big things I think we're going to talk about today. But so I've kind of been around the block, a lot of different larger projects, as well as, been digging into residential. Trust is huge with me and my team. My team doesn't work with me unless I trust them to be in a customer's home, which also just means, that we're doing work to code. We're doing work safely. We're respecting your home. This is your sanctuary.
Yeah.
So
I want to revisit the story that you told me a week or two ago, because I think it opens up the eyes really easy for like, wow, there is something here that I need to be paying attention to and doing this the right way to really protect myself, because otherwise I find myself in a situation in which what I refer to it as a kill shot to most people's net worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a good example of this back in Wisconsin, I know my dad kind of had uncovered this a number of years back. In Wisconsin, people tend to have basements in their homes. And there's actually a really big fault line that kind of runs through Wisconsin. And but it's not very active. And earthquake insurance is really, really cheap in Wisconsin. Or at least it has been. And if there were to be an earthquake, right, your basement collapsed in, it'd pretty much destroy your house. And normal homeowners insurance that most people have wouldn't cover that situation. But for a very, very, very small amount of money relative to the price of your home, you can ensure that kill shot doesn't happen to you, right? Like most people, if you lose your home, that's the kill shot, right? Like that home equity gone, you still have a mortgage outstanding, it's a disastrous situation. And so you shared with me this story about somebody that had was it a handyman?
A handyman, yeah.
Which I'll preface, there's nothing wrong with handymans, right?
Right.
Or handymen, handywoman. But there's a right way to hire them, and there's scope of works that maybe they should or shouldn't work in, and each one might be different. There might be more qualified or less qualified people doing handyman work. But could you share a little bit about that story? Like what were the precursors? What happened? And then what was the outcome? And then what was the outcome after sort of the disastrous outcome from a financial impact situation?
Yeah. So this was literally, I think 3 weeks ago now. Customer calls up and I answer the phone call, and she asks, "Hey, can you let me rephrase. Can you fix a botched fan install?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, absolutely. We install hundreds, if not thousands of fans all the time. And this is a ceiling fan." So I send a team out there, and so they're out there, master electrician and apprentice, and he goes up. And let me preface this with, the switches are in the wall or hanging out, and the fan's all put together. And so he goes up into the fan, pulls the shroud off, and there's a live wire sitting up there. And as soon as he pulls it up, he sees that it's arcing against the metal box. The metal box isn't grounded, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, what's going on here, right? So he turns the circuit off. And let me step back a little bit, give you a little backstory. So this customer had hired a handyman and left the job, told her he was going to come back. Never comes back, calls, texts, nothing, right? And that's why she ended up calling us. So we wrap this up. We fix the fan. We fix all the switches, get it all wired up. And so our assumption at this point is he just didn't know what he was doing. Mm-hmm. But if you think about this, that situation puts you in a situation, if you understand what arcing, when you have something arcing, you have a potential for a fire. And that might have just been a matter of time before something went up in flames. And if it happens up in the attic, that's one of the worst places to have a fire. Because it's going to burn up there. And before you know it, you don't have any smoke detection up there.
Yeah.
Then it's going to collapse the whole home.
Yeah.
And so I called the customer back up a little later and just said, "Hey, why did you end up going with the handyman?" And he just said, "Well, he was a cheaper option." Right. Mm-hmm. And so I got out of her who it was. I'm not going to mention that here. And I looked him up online on Doppel, Division of Professional Licensing. You can verify anybody's license. And I found him, and he had an application in there, and it said denied. So why is that a problem? Well, one, he's not qualified to do the work. The state hasn't qualified him, so he's not supposed to be doing it. Okay, there's no way an insurance company is going to protect him because he doesn't have the license. So I don't know if you want me to jump into like 3 things here, but
yeah,
sure. Okay,
yeah, sure.
So number 1, doesn't have a license. Well, so because he's not licensed, he probably also doesn't have workman's comp insurance. So now he is now an employee of the owner. Anything that happens to him in that home, he can sue the owner for. The owner has to take care of. So if he got electrocuted, if he fell off a ladder,
The
broke a hip,
homeowner.
the homeowner is
The
responsible.
homeowner is his direct employer.
Yes. So number one. Number two, because he's not licensed to do the work, your homeowner's insurance may or may not cover any damages because you hired an unlicensed professional. So if you go back and you read the fine print, you're going to find out whether or not they're going to cover you. And because you didn't hire someone professional, most likely they're not going to cover you if something happens.
Yeah.
Number three, so every contractor is required to carry general liability insurance so that if something does happen, you're covered. Now, how much coverage should they have? That's a big one, because if they only have 50,000, you burned down $1 million home, guess what you're getting? 50,000.
Yeah.
So, at the end of this, I have something I can give out for you to just go through a verification list of like, all right, hired somebody that's professional, that's licensed, insured, etc. But so those are kind of the three big things, making sure. And I guess I didn't add, you can verify their license, right? So you can go on Doppel, research the company. Ooh, okay, verify their license. Okay, their license, it's active. The other thing you can do is you can ask whoever comes to your home, hey, do you have your license on you? And you can also verify them on Doppel.
Yeah.
And you can also ask for a COI. So it's a certificate of insurance, and you can actually even have them put it in your name. So and you request that from them. It takes, if I were to do it, it'd take me 2 minutes, and I can send it to the customer. Hey, you're protected. And it shows all my insurance amounts. So $2 million for this, you have workman's comp, et cetera. And you can have that all in your possession. So if your home's your biggest asset, that's one way to protect it. At the end of that, you can also now forward all that information to your insurance company. And now it's showing a precedence that you are maintaining your home with licensed professionals. So if anything were to ever happen, guess what? It's already there.
Yeah. So, excuse me. I think sometimes as human beings, we always you hate confrontation, you hate questioning somebody else, especially if there's something you need from them, right? Like, I need this thing in my home repaired, replaced. And particularly in Southern Utah here, we have somewhat of a shortage of labor of professionals sometimes, right? Like, it can be hard to get an electrician out to your house, or a handyman, or a drywall contractor, or a painter, or a garage to repair guy, or whatever, right? Like, it can be a little bit tough to get somebody, and particularly the very reputable people sometimes have the hardest time getting out because they're busy.
Yeah.
Because they're reputable and do a good job. And so we don't want to ruffle feathers with people, like, naturally as human beings. And so it's a really uncomfortable conversation, I think, for people. So you, however, are on the other side of the table from that, right? Like, you are the person that's providing the insurance and having yourself questioned and stuff. What are maybe some ways that people could ask politely, and, to say, like, hey, where's your license? Give me the license and give me the insurance, dude. Like, or this whole thing's a non-starter, right? Like, how do they say that? Professionally, politely, a little suave, whatever, right? Like, how do you do that?
You can really just start from when you're making that phone call and you're talking to, whether it's a receptionist or a customer service rep, just ask, hey, are you guys insured? Are you licensed? Would you mind sending over your insurance certificate so that I know? You can ask directly what those coverages are. Sometimes it might feel like it's an awkward conversation, but you don't have to make it difficult. And they have all that stuff on record. Like, I'm happy. In fact, I'm kind of making a decision here of like, you know what? I think I'm just going to have my guys wear a badge, and here's everything right here. Like, look it up, because I want people to know, like, we are licensed and insured. Like, our goal is to do the right thing. But yeah, I think if you talk to that first person, I think that's probably the best place to do it when you're making that appointment.
Yeah.
Before someone comes out to your home and they've spent the time driving to your home and saying, hey, you're not going to do any work until. Yeah. Right. So you can kind of vet that out in the beginning. But you can also do a little research up front. And that is, if you're going to hire, or you're looking to hire ABC company, just hop on Doppel, search in their name, or put their name in, it's verify a license. If you literally just search verify a license Utah, it'll take you right to the link.
It's probably utah.doppel.gov or
It
something
is.
like that.
But, and you can search for it there, and now you've covered base one. And then, ask for that insurance. Cause when I think about it, I mean, there's some other stories, and maybe we'll get to them, where a customer lost their house and had nothing to fall back on.
Kill shot to the net worth.
Yes.
Kills your net worth.
And I would argue, you kind of sometimes have to put it in that perspective when you're thinking about who I'm going to hire, because, who are you putting in your home?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, like, I know personally, if I'm not home and it's my wife and kids at home, I really care who's going in my house.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to make sure they're reputable, not just anybody, and they can show up and be the nice guy and appear to be the nice guy, but who are they really? Are they background checked? My whole team's background checked.
Yeah.
Right. So we're trying to do things to alleviate that, that anxiety for any homeowner.
Sure.
And like I said, if, go ahead.
Do you think an easy follow-up way? Because I think sometimes, if you talk to somebody at the office or whatever, and they say, yeah, we're licensed and insured, but then you're like, okay, but you almost take them for their, at that point you're like, okay, I'll take you at face value. You guys told me you're licensed, you told me and insured. So they send the guy, they send a technician out, or the salesman that's going to bid the job, or whatever it might be. And, I think that's where the rubber starts to meet the road a little bit more. And people are going to say, hey, by the way, they said you had license and insurance, you got it with you. Right. Yeah. And now you're in a face-to-face kind of situation at your home. It becomes a bit more uncomfortable and stuff. Do you think it would be maybe like a really reasonable and easy way to ask for that would just to be simply when they say, hey, all right, we'll email the bid over or something, or if they kind of put out a price, just say, hey, could you email, right when you would say, hey, could you email me the bid?
Absolutely.
Just say, when you email me the bid, could you please include a copy of your insurance, your certificate of insurance, and your licensing?
Absolutely.
Because in that way, I think if you say it that way at that time, it puts you in a position that if they don't attach it on the email, it's really easy to say, hey, I had also asked for it, and you kind of said you guys would send that over. Could you please do that?
Yeah.
You never come off like the, unexpected confrontational person. Is that, would you ever think like from the contractor side that would be, awkward, or, hey, that's why are you asking for that? Or you're like, okay, sure.
It probably down here, I think it is awkward just because it's not being done. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's new. And I think that's one thing I hope personally, as a company, that we can help change people, their mindset on that. Like, even if it has to be awkward, like it just has to change, because
some things in life are just awkward.
They are, but I think asking an email is fine. And it kind of just depends how far you want to go. Like me personally, someone coming to my house, I'm asking for it, and you're going to send it over, and the COI is going to have my address on it, because if you end up in a situation, you've already got all the information.
How does that work with the COI? So do they have to then like call their insurance company, typically add your address, get it, or, hey, they got to call their insurance agent and say, send me a COI with reflecting this specific address on it? Or is there a special portal contractors get to use with their insurance companies to just generate that up themselves really quick?
Yeah. Some insurance companies, they do have a portal. Mm-hmm. Like it literally takes 2 minutes. Some insurance companies, they got to call their agent. Their agent's got to send it over. So some are a little more technologically advanced. Some aren't. In the commercial world, you couldn't do it without it. You had to have a COI on the project, because, those are much larger projects, definitely more risk. And the insurance company wants to have a say on what that coverage is going to be, what companies are involved. But on the residential side, you don't see it a lot, but again, what's the value?
Yeah, but I think that's part of why we're having this conversation, right? Is people should be considering this more from a behavioral perspective of how do you manage your wealth and think about things as a wealthy person should, regardless of the size of your net worth, right? Like I often think wealth is more of a state of mind and a set of behaviors than it is, do you have 2 commas or 3 commas or 1 comma or no commas in your net worth statement? It's kind of sometimes a little bit more of a a mindset and how you act in your decision-making process.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of those things that if you want to be kind of a savvy person that protects themselves, and what a cheap way to protect yourself, right? Like if you hate paying for homeowners insurance, right? Like I'm just like everyone else out there. I hate paying for insurance as much as the next guy, right? Like I don't want to pay for insurance that I don't need. I don't want to pay for more insurance than I need, right? I've got a lot of different feelings about a lot of the different types of insurance out there, right? And I'm not shy about that. However, a great way to increase your pain level on that is to have to file a homeowner's claim on your own property because something broke in your home that you had to file a claim on your own insurance, right? And in this case, we're saying it's because you hired somebody that didn't have the proper insurance coverage or licensing, that when something does go wrong, your insurance didn't even cover it potentially. And even if they do, it will drive your insurance premiums up, making you have to pay more money every single month for years and years. Versus have a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation, maybe, right? Slow things down, do an extra check or two, get through a checklist of items and make sure that everything's legit to protect yourself from that situation, because it's much easier to retain the money you work hard for, right? Than to blow it by having your own insurance premiums go up or losing your home equity because of a disaster. I think that's the wealthy mindset right there, right? So a little bit of proactivity, regardless of how uncomfortable it might feel.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really easy way to ask for it without it being an uncomfortable thing, right? Hey, when you email over the bid, could you send me a copy of the certificate of insurance and your licensing, please?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a trust but verify, right? It's really what it is. You're trusting they're going to be honest with you, but all right, will you just verify this for me and make sure I have it?
And it should be something that if they have it, it should be readily available. And even if you're the first person that's asked in a while, it doesn't make you in the wrong for asking for it. So, it's probably a red flag if they go, oh yeah, I've got it, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Definitely
red flag.
That's probably a red flag, right?
Yeah. And let me add to that, because there are companies, so you have to submit a lot of this to Doppel, but Doppel doesn't go and verify every month if you have insurance. It's just when you renew your license.
Mm-hmm.
So they may have gotten the insurance, and then because they don't want to pay the premiums, because it's not cheap in the commercial world, it's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Then cancel it and they don't have it, so that they don't have to pay for it.
Or lower their rates trying to save money, right?
Yeah. So.
And listen, it can be a tight economy out there, right? So people are looking to cut costs and save money where they can, particularly within their businesses. And that's where you're identifying. It might come back to bite a homeowner.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
And there's a lot of homes down here that, this is a fairly wealthy area in some areas. And, we've been in a lot of homes that are $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million homes. And if that's the kind of wealth you have, you really need to be careful and make sure you have the right people. So,
yeah, they say easy come, easy go, but unfortunately in money, it's always easy go, right? It's always easy go, regardless of how many years you've spent building it, right?
Yeah.
And we have a nationwide audience on this podcast and in our business. Is this different in other states at all, or is this pretty uniform across the entire United States?
There's actually several states that have been passing laws against handymen. I think the male population, we're all a little bit more gung-ho that, we can do it, no big deal, I'll take care of it myself, I'll save some money. And so you do end up with some of that, what would you say, macho attitude, right? And they go in, I've never done this before, but I'll figure it out, watch some YouTube videos. And so there's some states that have actually made it so they can't do plumbing, they can't do HVAC, they can't do electrical anymore. Okay. And for good reason. Those are the most critical systems in your home, but they're also the most dangerous systems in your home.
Yeah.
If they aren't maintained properly and they're not operating properly, you can have some serious issues. And so that's something I would also add. I realize some people to cut back costs, they don't want to pay that HVAC guy to come out every 6 months, or that plumber to come out every year, or an electrician to come out every year and do a safety check. But at the end of the day, you may not know what's hiding behind your wall or in your panel, or, with your HVAC system. I got a story about that as well with HVAC.
Sure.
Couple. So I actually owned a condo that I was renting out in northern Utah, and I had sold it. And my realtor that I use actually sold it to her nephew. Well, I got a phone call from her 6 months later, and she's like, "Hey, can you tell me who you used to install this HVAC unit?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I placed it like maybe over a year ago." And so I'm like, "What's going on?" And she says, "Well, they just condemned the condo." I'm like, "Whoa, okay, why?" And what happened is I had just actually, before they had moved in, I did it when my renters was there. I replaced the smokes, carbon monoxides, everything was good there. Well, in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., it's going off. The carbon monoxide smokes are all going off. So they get out of the house. They call 911. The fire department shows up, and they go in. They have monitors for CO2. Oh, hey, this is kind of high. Like, we don't know what's going on. There's no fire, no nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they call the gas company. Gas company comes out, and the guy's like, "Oh, you've got a leak in your furnace."
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "You guys are really lucky that your smoke alarm and your carbon monoxide were working, because I can promise you, with how high these are, if you would have stayed asleep, you wouldn't have woken up this morning. They would have died." And I was like, wow, right? Like, so important. At the end of the day, what happened is it was no one's fault on the HVAC unit. It was just a manufacturer defect. They ended up, there was a crack in the manifold,
mm-hmm.
and it was just releasing CO2. And, and that does happen, right? And so I guess that's a story just to say, like, pay attention to making sure your systems are operational. And just to kind of dive down on the smokes and carbs, carbon monoxide detectors, I'll tell you, probably 30% of the homes we go into, we always do safety audits. They're not even working, or they're not installed. And, that's your lifeline. I mean, one, it's also your home, your asset. That's your early alarm system to let you know, one, your real assets, yourself, your wife, your children, your significant others, getting them out of the home, but as well as that early alarm system can help save your home.
Yeah.
So making sure that's protected. Another story, and this is more related to making sure you use the right companies. So we did a safety inspection at a home here locally in Sun River, and so we also offer surge protection to protect all your appliances, AC units in your home. Well, this customer we did a full safety inspection. He decided to go with surge protection, get that installed on his home. Well, he had a standard AC unit condenser outside, and then he also had a split unit. So my master electrician went to go install surge on those two pieces of equipment because they're valuable. I think replacement costs at this point can be anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 for each. And he goes looking for the second disconnect, where the technician would go and they'd pull the plug and shut power off so they could maintenance the unit, and he can't find it. And so he starts looking, and he realizes that the HVAC company that came to install the split unit, they did what we call tapping off. And so they took the power from the other unit and didn't do a dedicated circuit, which is the way you need to do it to protect the equipment. So what could have happened potentially is, say a technician comes out to service that equipment. There's a plug on that disconnect you pull out, and then that shuts off power. Well, the other unit, if you pull the plug, it was landed on the line side, which means it still has power. So if someone didn't check to see if it wasn't, didn't have power, they easily could have gotten shocked and or electrocuted. So we talked to the homeowner about this, and it was another one of those scenarios. What happened is the HVAC company didn't hire an electrician to come do the work, didn't install a dedicated circuit. And so now you're putting somebody at risk along with the equipment because it wasn't protected. You can only go up to a certain amount of ampacity to where if it has an overcurrent situation, too much amperage, you'll destroy the motor. Anyways, so we got it taken care of, protected. We did contact that HVAC company, and they helped out in the situation, and it was a good learning experience for them. I'm not so sure they were, I don't know where they were with it, if they were just trying to do it cheap or if they were, but again, those are kind of scary things, because had someone got shocked there, the homeowner could have been liable, as well as the HVAC company that installed it. But, and someone potentially losing their life, and nobody wants that.
And even worse, if the person that got shocked didn't have workman's comp insurance, you're on the hook as the homeowner.
You're on the hook as the owner.
Oh man. So the whole thing unravels real quick.
Yeah. And so, our company, Mr. Sparky, we recommend doing an annual electrical inspection. Just make sure everything's good. Different owners, sometimes things change or use more power somewhere else. And it's really simple to do, but we got a 70-point checklist to do that. But anyways, those are all things that you can do. And you can even, something that's recommended, I bet you 0.001% of people do this, but you can actually, when you do maintenance or you do anything on your home, you can fax that to an insurance company, and it just builds a good track record. It will reduce a denial claim because you've got a proven track record that you're maintaining your home.
Interesting. I don't know that anyone's ever mentioned that to me before, which is contrary. Like, truthfully, like my opinion otherwise is always kind of been the stance of like, don't make waves at the insurance company, stay off their radar until you need them, sort of thing. So that's counterintuitive to what I would have naturally thought. Especially in the last couple of years, it seems like anytime you call the insurance companies, they have this propensity to raise your rates somehow, right? Or, you get a bigger increase at the renewal. So, that's interesting. I'll have to talk to some insurance agents I know about their thoughts on that. But I mean, it's all really insightful. And I think it comes back to just the behavior of slow things down and do what you can to protect yourself. It's like in the military, we would say, smooth is fast and fastest, or sorry, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Yeah. Right. And, operating your money and your life that way, I think, is a generally good principle as well. So right here, slow it down, be a smooth operator, right? And, get the right qualifications, get the right people working in your home. Make sure that you're taking the steps that you can to protect yourself, so that it doesn't go to the point that you need your homeowner's insurance.
Yeah.
If you do need your homeowner's insurance to step in, make sure it's set up right. Make sure that you have the right coverage in place. Make sure, if you have a reasonable situation and can afford it, I'm a big advocate of having an umbrella policy, right, for additional liability coverage. I say that as a guy that hates paying insurance, right? But it is that, I think, important of an insurance to consider. And if you do those things, then, you can be pretty smooth, and smooth becomes fast because you don't have to deal with your house burning down and lawsuits and, all of these other catastrophes and calamities that can happen in your life so quick, right? And it's a lot of this stuff, especially if you're a homeowner, it's no joke, right? Like I will tell you that at my house last year, we had our furnace unit. Luckily it didn't burst into flames, but the blower motor in our attic unit had, melted down in kind of an electrical fire situation. Right.
Oh, wow.
And, luckily we were home, we caught it, everything's fine. But, it's those situations where, again, like, no one was per se at fault, but I I luckily have had licensed people that I know and trust work on that in the past. And we have great insurance. So a little inconvenient at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pulling kids out of bed at midnight, but it could have been way worse, right? We're very happy it turned out the way it did. And we all move forward, but that's not everyone's so fortunate, right?
Yeah.
And so we got to do what we can do. We got to do what we can to protect ourselves by just being smooth operators.
Yeah. And one of those things, it's kind of hard to do sometimes, but it's just setting reminders in your phone, like, hey, check up on this, check up on that.
Yeah.
But there's a couple other things I'd like to bring up. What if you do run into a situation, like, what's your recourse? What do you do? Like, and most people don't know.
Interesting.
I'm happy to be that resource. You want to give me a call, I'll help you. Not a problem. But every state has some type of complaint board you can go to. And this one, again, it's doppel.utah.gov, and you can file a complaint. If you have a contractor that, and this goes, just beyond the insurance and protecting yourself on that scale. But if they said they were going to do work and they didn't do it, you can file a complaint against them.
Mm-hmm.
If they did poor work, or maybe it's something that requires a permit, and if you don't know if it requires a permit, just call your local city and talk to the building department. They'll let you know if you're supposed to have a permit. Because what that really entails is the city is going to send out an inspector and make sure it was done correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a protection there, and that's typically all free to you. But you can file that complaint online, and the investigations team for whatever state will go investigate that work. And if that, and why that's so important is now you're not just protecting yourself, but you're protecting the community. Mm-hmm. So if you have someone out there, whether they're stealing your money or they're doing unlicensed work, or, they're just not being truthful and honest with you, you can save everyone else the trouble as well. And, the states will go after them and take their license away, or they'll, do what they do. Some states are different than others. Utah seems to be pretty, I would say, not pretty is the wrong word, very lenient with contractors, versus like if you were in California, I mean, it's no joke. If you kind of step out of line in California, the state will come after you.
Well,
so.
Don't get me started on that.
but
taxes in California always.
Well, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, that's how they are about taxes too.
Well, flee before they start the exit tax again.
Yeah. One of my friends that's a real estate agent says top selling real estate agent in Southern Utah is Gavin Newsom.
True statement.
Anyways, not to get political, it seems to be a funny truth of the local area.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, it's a lot. It's good to know that there's some kind of recourse. I think the best course of action, though, like personally, I still am going to fall back on, the best way is to not find yourself in a situation where you have to ask the question, what is my recourse on this? Right.
Yeah.
Like that is, that's plan B or C, and being smooth operators at plan A tends to work out the best over time.
Yeah.
So, it's good to know what plan B is. And I try to tell people, like, it's better to look at plan B too, by the way, before you have to look at plan B. Like, know what plan B kind of is, looks, and feels like, as the alternative, so that if you have to, pull the ripcord and go, that's, you know what you're operating with at that point. But don't let, plan A get put on the back burner, or, go off half baked because plan B doesn't seem too bad or something, right?
Yeah, 100%. And look at that cost. Maybe plan A costs you a little more because you're paying somebody for their experience, professionalism, insurances, and making sure they are qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're obviously going to pay more. That company most likely has more expenses. And you do pay for it, but it protects you too.
Yeah.
And that's a very little amount of money, in my opinion, to pay versus going with a much cheaper option.
Yeah.
because now potentially you're not covered. And but you got to decide what your risk is. That $500 job versus your $750,000 or $1 million home. Maybe that's $1,000 job going with a reputable company. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to decide and weigh your options there.
Yeah, and we're not saying that it's always going to cost more. There might be a correlation there.
Sure.
Potentially some causation even.
Yeah.
But if you get a bid from somebody and all else equal, they, everyone's properly licensed, everyone's properly insured, and you feel good about all parties, feel free to pick whatever bid you think is still the best, best one for the job. Right. So that being said, I appreciate you taking some time to come in and share some of this knowledge with people. I think it's really valuable. And this is the kind of mindset that sets people up for success more so in my opinion than, picking the right ETF or, buying this property or that property or making this little adjustment. It's like the behavioral side of managing the whole picture, managing your life differently and, looking at things through a different lens and, really just looking out for the stuff. Like, I think it's looking out for the stuff that's going to be absolutely catastrophic. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I can do a little thing today behaviorally that's going to keep me from a potentially catastrophic event. I tend to want to take that behavior, right? It's like putting a seatbelt on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
small steps really in the scheme of things.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, James. Welcome to business in Southern Utah here. Again, anyone listening, James is the owner and operator of Mr. Sparky down here in Southern Utah. If you're local and need some electrical help, he is around and accepting new work. So with that, we'll see you guys all out there.